Hey guys, hakamhak here, and today I want to do a retrospective episode on Mirror Edge. Something amazing just happened on Steam recently. The original Mirror Edge is currently going on sale. And I know some people are like, oh, it's a sale. Steam always have a sale. But this is the first time that the game actually go on sale for $5 or your regional equivalent. For me, it's about 150 baht. So it's actually the cheapest the game have ever been. I feel like a lot of people have missed out on this game when it originally came out, and it's a very underrated game in many ways. So I want to do an episode on this game. So this would officially be my second episode of Retrospective. So yeah, Mirror Edge is one of a kind masterpiece of a game. It create almost one of its own genre out of what they managed to come up with in terms of gameplay. They create this first-person platforming genre that very few games these days can even replicate that or even try to make it in similar way, right? A lot of games fail trying to be mirrored, and I think that's one of the biggest reason why I feel like this game is such a great game to go back and looked on, because a lot of old game, one of the biggest problem is that when you go back you start seeing old mechanic that it already exists in modern game. However, the mechanic that exists within Mirror Edge, you don't see a lot of that in other games, or you see it sometimes, but if it is done poorly. Games like Far Cry use this type of platforming in when you climb up tower and stuff like that, and most of it is not as interesting as we see it in Mirror Edge. And some game did it well as well, like Dying Light recently did this whole first person platforming really well. So there is cases to be argued where they can use it properly, and time when they didn't do the mechanic justice. And so I think it's worth going back and look how you can use this mechanic in games and why it's such a great and masterpiece of a game, because very few game managed to do what they did. Mirror Edge is this badass, fast-paced, first-person shooter. Well, not shooting. You can shoot, but like most of the time you don't use a gun. Parkour platforming game where you play as this female badass runner named Fate. And the game set in this cool-looking dystopian futuristic where they use runner to deliver stuff for some reason. It doesn't really make much sense. Why would you still be using runner? I don't know. The story can be kind of weird when you start thinking about it, and it can sometimes get borderline kind of dumb as well. But you can ignore most of it, because why you're playing this game is because of the gameplay. The gameplay is where it's at with this game. The way you can use Fate and control her, moving her through these levels and pulling off these insane parkour moves is super satisfying and just plain fun. And the way in which you control and how much the control let you move around and do things and jump and do these crazy moves and parkour stuff is what make the game shine. DICE make quite possibly one of the most unique first-person game with Mirror Edge, and this game was published by EA of all people, which really might surprise a lot of people, because Mirror Edge in many ways is a relic from the past, back when EA used to be this company that is about taking risks and making unique, new and interesting game. And looking back at it, it's kind of hard to imagine EA being that way when you see the kind of stuff they put out nowadays, sequel and a franchise upon franchise of games, and dumbing down gameplay for the sake of capitalizing on bigger market, right? And so it's really interesting when you start looking back at EA and how they were back in the day. And Mirror Edge is something you can show to people that a company that doesn't care about game wouldn't publish this game, wouldn't put this game out, this game that is so different from everything in the market. EA literally go out of their way with this one. I mean, you feel like they really allowed DICE to make an entire game about parkour, first-person game that's all about player control, right? And unique movement. It's all about going really, really fast through the obstacle that the game put in front of you. And the entire game is all about the gameplay first. And when they really nail it with this one. I like to compare it as Sonic, but a first-person parkour Sonic kind of game. You want to go fast, you want to do all these moves, and you want to pull it off. And it can be really satisfying when you pull it off. But the game also suffers some of the problem that Sonic does as well, because well, it's a platformer game. So if you are not familiar with the level and you haven't played through it a few times, and the first kind of time you play through it, you might stumble a little bit. So in many ways, it suffers from a lot of problems Sonic have, and it's also benefit a lot from what Sonic has. So in many ways, it's a modern take on Sonic, right? But in a very different type of game, different type of protagonist, different type of stories and worlds. The stylistic art style that this game has is also what makes this game age incredibly well. Can you believe that this game came out back in 2009? I mean, just look at it. It looked great. The simplistic art style with contrast of white and red really gives this game a really unique look. Sometimes they use orange and other colors, but like it is like the contrast is crazy with this game. Sometimes it can be a bright color and to kind of hint you toward things that you want to navigate toward and move toward, and it really gives you this unique feel that you don't have with other game. Hell, even the reboot and the sequel to this game, right, Middle Age Catalyst, which came out this year actually, still don't have as striking of an aesthetic vision as this game has. Sure, the graphic for Catalyst might be a lot better than original Mirror Edge, because well, it came out this year. That game actually killed even the high-end GPU on the market. Put it on hyper setting, which is a step above ultra setting in Mirror Edge Catalyst. Most of the GPU in the market would struggle, even like the 970 and 980 GPU. But the art direction this game have still remain much more consistent than Catalyst, because they use art direction in a really interesting way, and they never break from that. And they don't have none of those J.J. Abrams neon lens flare god ray stuff. You see a lot of those in movie where they use lens flare and these kind of over exaggerated colors to kind of make it feel futuristic and cool and weird, right? But the original Mirror Edge didn't do that. They use color for a specific reason to kind of hint player toward the area they want to go, and to create this minimalistic approach to the design of the color and how they use it within the level and stuff like that, right? But Catalyst didn't use it the same way. Catalyst used those core aesthetic design, but then they add this lens flare to make everything look cooler and more, modern with more details and stuff like that. And that's, I feel like, something that I see a lot in Frostbite engine. I feel like EA probably invests a lot on this engine, and they want to make as much use as possible for them. However, this whole cinematic look that video game like to have can sometimes really hurt the game more than it helps, especially when, some time pass. I feel like 10 years from now, we might go back to Mirror Edge and we're gonna say, whoa, looking back, like, the graphic, obviously, Catalyst is gonna be better, but, like, looking back, like, some of the stuff that is used in Catalyst, you're gonna start realizing that, wait a minute, like, these type of aesthetic decision actually kind of ruin the game. It might look cool nowadays, it might look cool today, but, like, in the future, we're gonna start realizing that those can make the game look worse over time, especially when we have better graphics and we are more used to that. The simplistic art style never go away, right? Like Mario, you can always go back to it. It has those retro art, right? Like they do have art vision, but it's also about the limitation of the technology back then. Something like Super Meat Boy, you can always go back to that game and you're always gonna see Super Meat Boy the same way. Even Prince of Persia, my first episode on Retrospective, I talk about Prince of Persia. That game have really cool art as well, and it's not necessary because it has great graphics, which it kind of did, but it's because the design and the art that they use fit the game, and they didn't over exaggerate and over detail the environment, right? It's our eye when we play this game. It's throughout human eye, right? So why would there be these lens flare? You might sometimes have to ask, because we're not using camera to capture these moment, right? It's these first person game is about immersing player into the game, and these lens flare really taking you out, make you feel like you're looking through a camera lens, which in turn make you realize that you're playing a game, which in turn stop you from immersing within the game. So that sometimes can be really sucks when you're playing through a game and you're kind of in it, and then some visual that the game used kind of ruin the whole immersion that you have with the game. And I mean, it looked cool on film, right? Like I mentioned, J.J. Abrams uses a lot in his Star Trek universe film, right? And those futuristic sci-fi movies, but like don't put that in video game. Like it doesn't fit so well in video game, especially in first person game that you want player to immerse into. And I understand you can remove those in the PC version, but for those who play in console, they don't have that option, and I feel like those options should be something you turn on rather than having it on by default, because it doesn't fit the game at all. At least that's my opinion. We also can't talk about Mirror Edge without talking about the level design. The level design in this game is really interesting. It's kind of linear, but like the way in which you navigate the level make you sometimes feel like the level is actually bigger than it actually is. There's places that you can go to, but like you don't need to go to. It's just sometimes kind of out there, right? Like, and you can kind of go to it. Sometimes there's collectible and stuff like that. The way in which the game used the art to convey where you want to go, you're gonna see these red highlight within the level that tell you where you're supposed to be heading, right? Tell you where you should be, parkouring and jumping and doing all those stuff, right? To get into area in which you kind of want to go and progress within the story. The way in which you use that is really cool, and it really helps you navigate the level. So how about the control? I've mentioned the control feel nice and feel awesome, but like how does it work? It rely heavily on the trigger and the bumper on your controller. If you're using Xbox controller, if you're using PS4, PS3 controller, it's gonna be R1 or R2. And if you're using mouse and keyboard, it's going to be jumping, spacebar, E, and mouse press. It assigned the left bumper for jumping, and it's assigned right bumper for you to kind of do this 180 spin, because it's really useful within the game because you are going to be spinning around a lot. And the left trigger allows you to do this down action, which is sliding. Most of the time you would be sliding or ducking into a vent and stuff like that, so you can navigate different layer of the map. You're not just jumping around, you're also kind of sliding under a vent or going below stuff or dodging enemy attack and stuff like that. There's also a button associated with pick up weapon or dropping weapon. You wouldn't usually be using the weapon, like I said, but you can come across a weapon that the enemy drop, or you might beat him enough time and take him down and then took his weapon. Or there's also a really cool mechanic where if you press X, it's gonna be like slow down time, and it's gonna allow you to have enough reaction time for you to press Y mid enemy attack, right? So the enemy gonna try to attack you, and in the middle of the attack you can press Y to grab the weapon. But normally it would be really difficult to do that because the animation is really quick, even when you play it on a really high frame rate. Normal human reaction probably gonna have a hard time taking the weapon mid fight, right? But with this slow down time mechanic, you can use that in conjunction with taking down enemy while they trying to attack you, and it allows you to take enemy out when you slow down the time. So it's really useful technique, and it's really useful mechanic for the game to have, especially when you're surrounded by enemies and you're not familiar with the map yet, so you don't know how you can run away from the fight. Sometimes the best approach is to steal the enemy gun and then use it against the group of the enemies and slowly find your way around the map. There is also a button associated with hint. You can press and hold B, that allow it gonna hint you where you're supposed to go. Your character Fate gonna look at the direction in which you were supposed to be going, and that's kind of tell you the direction you want to be going. But sometimes you are not going directly the way she is looking at, right? Like she may be looking above you, right? But sometimes you have to go around out back because the door in front of you might be closed, and then maybe you can't climb up just yet. You have to go around. Maybe there's an electric fence. There's a lot of obstacle that is in your way, and so this hint can kind of help you progress within the game, but it doesn't tell you outright what you were supposed to do, which is really good to have that. And like I said, the art design of the game not only is striking and cool, it also helps you navigate the map as well. When you play it, you will know what I'm talking about. Those who play the game probably know exactly what I'm talking about, but like the way in which they use color to associate where you're supposed to be going is really useful and cool, and it really is way better than just telling people where to go with a hint. So the game doesn't necessarily hold your hand, but it gives you a lot of tools in which it allows you to go through the game, and I think that's really awesome. The story perspective, like I said, I didn't want to touch on the story at all because, well, it's almost non-existent. There is some story here and there, but it's very cheesy and boring. One of her biggest motivation is to save her sister, which is a little interesting, but like outside of that, she was a runner before. They didn't explore too much why they need runner in this futuristic kind of world, like I said, and so it doesn't, some of the stuff really doesn't add up, and she is consistently being gunned down by maybe sometimes her enemy and sometimes the cop as well, even though she in a way is a criminal, but like it's so often that the cop just gun you down, even though they have you at gunsight, and most of the cop probably wouldn't be shooting you. In terms of the story, sometimes it break immersion a lot, so I usually just skip the story. I mean, like if you're playing it through the first time, I would recommend you going through the story as well, but like if you played before and you didn't like the story, I think it's okay to skip the cutscene and stuff like that, because most of it is kind of long as well, and the cutscene is not actually that interesting. They use cool aesthetic comic book art type in their cutscene, which it look alright, but like it is not in-game cutscene. They didn't obviously invest too much into the story perspective within this game. They really nail down the gameplay, and they want to deliver the unique type of gameplay, and that's definitely what they did, and they did it awesomely, and that's why I feel everyone should go and play this 2009 game. How long has it been? It has been 7 years already since 2009, so like 7 years later, and now we're talking about Mirror Edge, and I still feel like this game is still better than the sequel that come out recently. The sequel that just come out recently with the whole reboot thing, and not a reboot thing, very weird. It's a reboot, but it's not. That's what EA tell us, right? But clearly it's a reboot because, well, if you look at the story, none of the same stuff kind of occur. I mean, Catalyst as a sequel still kind of have some interesting gameplays, and they did a lot of cool stuff, and I still would recommend you to check it out, but it's still on the expensive side right now. Now Mirror Edge is like $5, so there's no reason for you not to pick it up, right? So I feel like you should pick Mirror Edge up first. If you like the gameplay, you would definitely like Catalyst, but yeah, I feel like it still is a better game because the gameplay they nailed down then is still awesome now, and I didn't like a lot of stuff they did with Catalyst, and the whole idea that it's a reboot when it's not a reboot really grind my gear. So yeah, I'm not hating on Catalyst or anything. I think it still is a cool game, and they did respect Mirror Edge and a lot of what came before. But like I said, like the fact that this game came from EA speak volume to kind of how they create game back in the day and how they're willing to take risks, and like the whole originality within this game is also the driving force of why the game is so interesting and fun back then. And I feel like Catalyst lose a lot of that since it's not original, you know, because they're just re-exploring the same mechanic that they did before, which is still fun, which is still cool, but you know, it's not original, it's not new. So yeah, that's my retrospective. I hope you like it. It's a little bit longer than I expected it to be, you know. I just kind of want to recommend you guys to go pick it up now, but like I end up, you know, thinking that it would be better to explain why and do the whole retrospective video on it rather than just go tell you to buy a game without, you know, reasoning and giving my own thoughts and opinion about the game first. So yeah, that's my thought on the game, and I hope you guys enjoyed the video. As always, if you do, you can always like the video and comment why you like it, and if you don't, dislike button is right next to it, and tell me why you don't like the video, because those feedback always help me. So yeah, thank you for watching. See you guys. Peace. A first person parkour Sonic kind of game. You want to go fast.